Tennessee clutched her swollen belly as another contraction ripped through her body like wildfire. Around her, the trading post burned. Smoke filled her lungs. Apache war cries echoed off canyon walls. Her husband Samuel lay dead in the dirt outside, an arrow through his chest. She pressed deeper into the root cellar, biting her lip until blood came. The baby was coming now, whether she wanted it or not. Before we continue, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Tokyo, midnight in Mexico City, afternoon in London, or evening in Sydney. I want to know where in the world you are experiencing this story with me. Don't just sit back, tell me your location. Now, let's dive deeper into how Tennessee ended up fighting for 2 lives in a burning hell. 3 days earlier, the Arizona territory stretched before them like a golden promise. Tennessee Morrison sat on the wagon seat beside Samuel, her hand resting on her belly. 8 months pregnant and still traveling. Samuel said they had to reach Fort Apache before the baby came. The Chiricahua Apache had been quiet for weeks. Too quiet, he whispered to the other traders. "We'll be fine, Tenny," Samuel had said, using the nickname only he was allowed to speak. His weathered hands gripped the reins. Mongas Coloradus gave his word. Safe passage for fair trade. Tennessee nodded, but something cold twisted in her chest. She had learned to trust that feeling. 3 years on the frontier had taught her that silence often came before storms. The trading post sat in a valley between red rocks that looked like sleeping giants. Adobe buildings clustered around a central courtyard. A well in the center promised fresh water. Children ran between the buildings, their laughter mixing with the sound of hammering and voices in 3 different languages. English, Spanish, and Apache words floated through the warm air. Samuel's partner, Marcus Webb, met them at the gate. His face looked carved from the same red rock as the canyon walls. "Samuel, thank God you made it. We got troubles brewing." "What kind of troubles?" Samuel helped Tennessee down from the wagon. Her back ached something fierce. "Soldiers came through yesterday. Said there's been raids up north. Mongas Coloradus is gathering warriors. They think we're selling guns to the wrong people." Tennessee felt the baby kick hard against her ribs. "Samuel, maybe we should head back." "Can't do that, Tenny. We got contracts to fulfill. People counting on us." Samuel's voice carried that stubborn edge she knew too well. "Besides, Mongas knows me. We've done business for 2 years. He won't break his word." That night, Tennessee lay in the small adobe room behind the trading post. Samuel snored beside her, one arm thrown across her belly. Through the single window, stars burned like tiny fires in the black sky. The baby moved restlessly inside her, as if it sensed something she couldn't name. She pressed her hand against the cool adobe wall and whispered a prayer her grandmother had taught her. "Keep us safe through the dark hours. Let morning come gentle." Outside, a coyote howled long and lonesome. Another answered from across the valley. Then silence fell like a heavy blanket. The kind of silence that made her skin crawl. Tennessee closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But the feeling in her chest grew stronger. Something was coming with the dawn. Something that would change everything forever. Dawn came with the thunder of hooves and the whistle of arrows cutting through morning air. Tennessee jolted awake as Samuel leaped from their bed, grabbing his rifle from beside the door. War cries filled the valley like the howls of angry spirits. Through the window, she saw Apache warriors on painted horses streaming between the buildings. "Tenny, get to the cellar. Now." Samuel's voice stayed calm, but his hands shook as he checked his weapon. "Whatever happens, you stay down there until it's over." Tennessee struggled to her feet, her belly heavy and awkward. A sharp pain shot through her back. "Not now," she begged silently. "Please, not now." She pulled on her dress with fumbling fingers as gunshots exploded outside. Marcus Webb's voice rang out from the courtyard. "Samuel, they got us surrounded. Mongas Coloradus himself is leading them." Samuel kissed Tennessee's forehead hard. His lips felt cold despite the desert heat already building. "I love you, Tenny. You remember that, no matter what." He ran outside before she could answer. Tennessee moved toward the window and peered through a crack in the wooden shutter. What she saw made her blood turn to ice water. Chief Mongas Coloradus sat on a black horse in the center of the courtyard. Paint streaked his face in red and white lines. His dark eyes burned with fury as he spoke in rapid Apache to his warriors. She counted at least 30 riders, maybe more, all armed with rifles that gleamed in the early sunlight. Samuel walked toward the chief with his hands raised, his rifle left behind in the dirt. Mongas Coloradus, we have an agreement. Why do you bring war to my door? The chief's voice carried across the courtyard like rolling thunder. You lie, White Eyes. Your soldiers killed my son. They used guns that came from your hands. No. Samuel shook his head. I sell only to you, never to the army. You know this. My son dies with a bullet from a traitor's rifle. The marking on the metal tells me this. Mongas Coloradus raised his own weapon. Blood for blood. This is Apache way. Tennessee pressed her hand against her mouth to keep from crying out. Another pain ripped through her lower back and wrapped around her belly like a rope pulled tight. The baby was coming whether the world was ending or not. Samuel took another step forward. Take me then. Leave the others. My woman carries a child. Your woman should have stayed in the white man's world. The chief's finger moved to the trigger. Today, all debts are paid. The gunshot cracked like lightning. Samuel fell backward into the dust. Tennessee bit through her lip to keep from screaming. Blood pooled beneath her husband's still body as Apache warriors swarmed the buildings. Fire arrows arced through the air. Within minutes, the trading post blazed like a torch against the morning sky. Smoke poured through every crack and gap in the adobe walls. Tennessee grabbed the rope ladder Samuel had built into their room and lowered herself into the root cellar beneath their floor. The small underground space was cool and dark. Sacks of grain and barrels of water lined the walls. Samuel had dug it deep enough for her to stand upright, but now every movement sent lightning through her spine. She pressed her back against the cool earth wall and tried to breathe through the pain. Above her, boots thundered across the floor. Apache voices shouted orders. Something heavy crashed down, maybe their wooden table. The smell of smoke grew thicker. She pulled a piece of cloth over her nose and mouth, but it barely helped. Another contraction hit, like a fist squeezing her insides. This time she couldn't stop the low moan that escaped her throat. The baby was coming fast now. Too fast. She had seen women give birth before, but never alone. Never while death rode overhead. Tennessee sank to her knees in the dirt and tried to remember everything her mother had told her about bringing children into the world. But all she could think about was Samuel lying dead in the courtyard and the fire eating everything they had built together. Hours crawled by in the suffocating darkness beneath the earth. Tennessee's body fought against her with contractions that squeezed tighter and came faster, like a rope being pulled around her middle by invisible hands. Above her hiding place, the sounds of war had faded to the whisper of flames eating wood and the occasional crash of falling beams. The Apache warriors had taken their bloody payment and vanished into the desert like ghosts. She had torn her cotton slip into strips, working by feel alone in the black silence. The root cellar pressed in around her like a coffin. Samuel had built this space to store grain through the harsh winters, never imagining his wife would bring their child into the world surrounded by death and destruction. A stub of candle sat on the wooden shelf beside burlap sacks. She struck a match with trembling fingers, desperate for light to push back the terror. The weak flame revealed her makeshift birthing bed of torn fabric and grain sacks. But the light only made everything more real. Samuel was gone. She was alone. Their baby was fighting to enter a world that had just bared its fangs. Another wave of pain bent her double. She gripped the wooden support post and breathed like her mother taught her back in Missouri, short puffs through pursed lips. "Stay strong, little one," she whispered to her swollen belly. "Mama's here with you." But she felt anything but strong. Her husband lay dead in the courtyard above. Their dreams had turned to smoke and ash. She was trapped underground with no midwife, no doctor, no helping hands if the birth went wrong. Heavy boots crunched through debris overhead. Tennessee's heart slammed against her ribs. She pinched out the candle flame, hissing as the hot wax burned her fingertips. Were the Apache back to search for survivors? She pressed herself against the cool earthen wall and held her breath until spots danced before her eyes. The footsteps moved with purpose through the ruins above. Not random searching, but deliberate movement from one spot to another. A man's voice called out, the words unclear but the tone questioning. Someone looking for signs of life in the wreckage. Tennessee bit down on her knuckle to keep silent. The baby kicked hard inside her, as if sensing the danger that surrounded them both. She placed her hands on her belly and tried to send calm thoughts to her unborn child. Be still, sweet baby. Let us hide until the danger passes. The boots stopped directly over the cellar entrance. Dust filtered down between the wooden planks as weight shifted above. Tennessee's throat closed with fear. Discovery meant death for both her and her child. She knew this as surely as she knew her own name. A voice spoke clearer now, and the words made her blood turn cold. I know someone's down there. Saw smoke from your candle drifting up through the cracks. You can come out peaceful, or I can come down and fetch you myself. The accent was strange, not Apache, but not like any settler she had met. Mountain speech mixed with something harder, wilder. Her mind raced through possibilities. Army scout? Another traitor? Or worse, a vulture who picked through the remains of raids looking for easy prey? Her body chose that moment to betray her. The strongest contraction yet gripped her like a giant's fist. The cry tore from her throat before she could stop it, echoing off the earthen walls like a bell announcing her presence to whoever waited above. Well now, the voice said, gentler this time. Ma'am, you hurt down there? Tennessee closed her eyes and faced the hardest choice of her life. Trust a stranger with everything, or try to birth her baby alone in the darkness. I'm having a baby, she called up, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Please don't hurt us. Silence stretched between them like a held breath. Then the wooden boards began to shift, letting golden sunlight stream into her dark world. A man's shadow blocked most of the light, but she could see long hair tied back and buckskin clothes stained dark with travel. Name's Jack Sullivan, the shadow said. Most call me Bear Claw. He held up his left hand where only thumb and pinky finger remained. Grizzly took the rest when I was young and foolish enough to think I was tougher than I was. He dropped into the cellar with surprising grace for such a large man. In the dim light, Tennessee saw a face weathered by sun and wind, with pale blue eyes that seemed to see everything. A mountain man, no doubt about it, but his voice stayed soft and his movements careful as he knelt beside her. How long you been laboring? He asked, setting down a leather pack she hadn't noticed before. Since the attack started this morning. Another contraction hit, and she gripped his offered hand, squeezing until she thought she might break bones. Apache hit the post hard. I've been tracking them for days. His jaw tightened. They killed my partner up north. Left him for the buzzards. My husband Samuel. Did you see him out there? Jack nodded slowly. I'm sorry, ma'am. He died fighting brave. Took 2 warriors with him before they brought him down. The grief crashed over her harder than any birthing pain. She sobbed for Samuel, for their lost future, for the baby who would never know its father's gentle hands. Jack's calloused palm settled warm on her shoulder. We got work to do now, he said quietly. I delivered plenty of foals and calves in my time. Can't be too different with babies. But we got to be quiet about it. Monga's Coloradus left scouts watching the area. Jack Sullivan worked with hands that had gentled wild horses and delivered life in the middle of nowhere. Tennessee gripped his forearm as another contraction rolled through her like thunder across the desert. His pale eyes stayed calm in the flickering candlelight, focused and sure in a way that made her believe this might actually work. Easy now, Tenny. Don't fight against it. Let your body do what it knows how to do. His voice stayed low and steady. Above them, the ruins of the trading post settled and creaked like old bones. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried its lonesome call. Tennessee nodded and tried to breathe through the pain. This mountain man with his missing fingers and weathered face was the only thing standing between her baby and death. She had to trust him because there was no other choice in this broken world. Tell me about Samuel, Jack said quietly as he arranged her torn petticoat strips into neat piles. Keep your mind somewhere else while your body works. He was gentle, Tennessee whispered, tears mixing with sweat on her cheeks. Never raised his voice, even when the other traders got drunk and stupid. Said there was enough shouting in the world already. Another wave of pain crested and broke. Jack counted under his breath, timing the contractions like he was reading the rhythm of a storm. Sounds like a good man. What brought you two out to this wild country? Dreams. The word came out bitter as desert alkali. Samuel said we could build something clean and honest here. Trade fair with everyone, Apache and Mexican and white folk alike. Make enough money to buy land back east and raise children proper. Jack's jaw tightened. This territory got a way of eating dreams and spitting out bones. I seen too many good folks come west thinking they could tame something that don't want taming. Were you born out here? Tennessee asked, grateful for anything to focus on besides the fire building in her lower back. Kansas farm boy originally. Lost my family to cholera when I was 16. Headed west because there wasn't nothing left to stay for. He checked the candle, making sure the light stayed dim enough not to attract attention. Been in these mountains near 20 years now. They get in your blood after a while. The next contraction hit harder than before. Tennessee doubled over, fighting back a scream that wanted to tear from her throat. Jack caught her shoulders and looked into her eyes with an intensity that made her forget everything else. Listen to me now. The baby's coming faster than I expected. You're going to have to push soon, and when you do, you got to be quiet as a church mouse. One sound too loud, and we're both buzzard bait. Tennessee nodded, understanding flooding through her. They weren't just fighting to bring life into the world. They were fighting to keep that life hidden from death that stalked the desert around them. I can see the head, Jack whispered, wonder creeping into his voice despite their danger. Dark hair like yours. One more push should do it. Tennessee bore down with everything she had, pouring all her love for Samuel and all her hopes for their child into that final effort. The baby slipped into Jack's waiting hands like a fish sliding into water. A perfect little girl with tiny fists already clenched for fighting. But the baby didn't cry. She lay still and blew in Jack's palms, her chest barely moving. Tennessee's heart stopped beating as she watched this stranger who had become her salvation work over her daughter with gentle, desperate fingers. Come on, little warrior, Jack whispered, rubbing the baby's back and chest. You fought this hard to get here. Don't give up now. He cleared the baby's nose and mouth with his pinky finger, then breathed softly into her tiny lungs. Once, twice, 3 times. Tennessee prayed harder than she had ever prayed in her life, begging God not to take this child after everything else had been stolen from her. The baby's chest rose. Her mouth opened in a silent cry that would have been music if they could have afforded the sound. Color flooded into her cheeks like sunrise painting the desert. Jack wrapped her quickly in the cleanest cloth they had. She's perfect, Tenny. Absolutely perfect. He placed the baby on Tennessee's chest, and she felt her heart piece itself back together around this tiny miracle. But their joy lasted only seconds. Hoofbeats echoed off the canyon walls, growing closer. Apache riders returning to check their work. Jack blew out the candle, plunging them back into darkness. They can't find us here, he breathed against Tennessee's ear. If they do, this little girl never gets to see tomorrow. Tennessee held her daughter close and listened to death riding past overhead, knowing their real fight was just beginning. The hoofbeats circled the ruined trading post like vultures overhead. Tennessee pressed her newborn daughter against her chest and tried to make both their heartbeats quiet enough to escape notice. Jack crouched beside them in the darkness, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. Above their heads, Apache voices spoke in sharp, clipped tones. 3 riders. Jack whispered so softly Tennessee felt the words more than heard them, checking to make sure they didn't miss anything valuable. The baby stirred against Tennessee's skin, her tiny mouth opening in what would have been a cry. Tennessee quickly offered her breast, and the infant latched on with surprising strength. The suckling motion sent afterbirth pains through Tennessee's body, but she bit her lip and stayed silent. Boots walked directly over their hiding place again. Dust sifted down between the wooden planks like snow. Someone was poking through the ashes, looking for anything worth taking. Tennessee could smell smoke and something else that made her stomach turn. The scent of burned dreams and and spilled blood. "We can't stay here," Jack breathed against her ear. His words were barely sound, more like shared thoughts in the darkness. "Come morning, they'll be back with the whole war party. This place will be crawling with warriors looking for survivors to torture." Tennessee nodded, understanding the horrible truth. They had to move, and soon. But she had just given birth in a hole in the ground. Her body felt like it had been torn apart and barely stitched back together. The thought of walking anywhere seemed impossible. "There's cave systems in the Red Rocks about 2 miles north," Jack continued. "Sacred places the Apache won't enter without good reason. If we can reach them before dawn, we might have a chance." The riders above seemed to be moving away, their voices fading toward the canyon mouth. But Tennessee knew they would return. Men like Mongas Coloradus didn't leave loose ends. If they suspected anyone had survived their raid, they would hunt until they found proof one way or another. "Can you travel?" Jack asked, his pale eyes studying her face in the dim starlight filtering through the cracks above. Tennessee looked down at her daughter, so small and perfect against her chest. This baby deserved a chance to grow up, to see sunrises and learn to laugh, and maybe find love someday. Samuel was gone, but his child lived. That had to be enough to keep fighting for. "I can travel," she said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "Just tell me what needs doing." Jack smiled for the first time since she had met him, and it transformed his weathered face completely. "You got steel in your backbone, Tenny Morrison. Your husband chose well." He helped her sit up slowly, watching for any signs that she might faint. Tennessee's head spun like a child's top, but she stayed conscious. Jack tore more strips from her ruined dress and showed her how to bind them around her middle to hold everything together inside. "We'll move slow and quiet. Rest when you need to, but we got to reach those caves before the sun comes up." He gathered his few belongings and slung them over his shoulder. "What you want to call this little fighter?" Tennessee looked down at her daughter's peaceful face. Samuel had wanted to name a girl after his grandmother back in Ohio. But this child had been born in fire and violence, delivered by a stranger's hands while death rode overhead. She needed a name that matched her fierce beginning. "Hope," Tennessee said. "Her name is Hope Morrison." Jack nodded approvingly. "Hope it is. Now let's get Hope and her mama somewhere safe before those Apache decide to come back for another look." He climbed out of the cellar first, moving like a cat despite his size. Tennessee heard him checking the area, making sure the coast was clear. Then his face appeared in the opening above, silhouetted against the star-filled sky. "All quiet. Hand me the baby first, then I'll help you up." Tennessee kissed Hope's forehead and whispered a promise. "We're going to make it, sweet girl. Your mama's not giving up, and neither are you." She passed her daughter up to Jack's waiting hands, watching him cradle the tiny bundle like he was holding spun glass. Then she began the painful climb out of the hole that had become Hope's first home. The trading post lay in ruins around them. Charred timbers poked up from the ashes like broken teeth. Samuel's body was gone, probably dragged away by coyotes or buried under the collapsed roof. Tennessee said a silent goodbye to the man who had loved her and the dreams they would never share. But Hope was alive. Hope was perfect. And as long as Tennessee had breath in her body, she would make sure her daughter had a chance to see better days than this one. Jack handed the baby back and pointed toward the dark outline of cliffs rising against the stars. 2 miles, he said quietly. One step at a time. Tennessee took that first step into the unknown, carrying her daughter toward whatever tomorrow might bring. The desert night wrapped around them like a cold blanket as they picked their way through rocks and scrub brush. Every step sent lightning through Tennessee's torn body, but she kept moving. Hope slept against her chest, tiny fingers curled around a piece of Tennessee's dress like she was holding on for dear life. Jack moved ahead like a ghost, reading the landscape in ways Tennessee couldn't understand. He would pause, listen to sounds she couldn't hear, then change direction slightly to avoid some danger only he could sense. His missing fingers didn't slow him down at all as he helped her over fallen logs and around patches of loose stone that might give way. "How much further?" Tennessee whispered when they stopped beside a towering rock formation that looked like a giant's hand reaching toward the stars. "Half mile, maybe less." Jack's voice was barely breath in the darkness. These cliffs been sacred to the Apache for generations. Stories say their ancestors' spirits live in the caves. Most warriors won't enter without permission from the elders. Tennessee shifted hope to her other arm, trying to ease the ache in her shoulders. The baby had nursed twice during their slow journey, but otherwise stayed quiet, as if she understood their lives depended on silence. Such a smart little thing, already learning the harsh lessons of this wild country. What if they follow us anyway? Tennessee asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. Jack's jaw tightened in the moonlight. Then we make our stand in a place where the spirits might help us fight. They climbed a narrow path that zigzagged up the cliff face. Tennessee's legs shook with exhaustion, but Jack's steady hand on her elbow kept her upright. Behind them, the valley spread out like a dark ocean dotted with the dying embers of what had been her home. Somewhere out there, Apache warriors waited for dawn to continue their hunt. The cave entrance appeared suddenly, a black mouth in the red rock face hidden behind a curtain of hanging vines. Jack parted the vegetation carefully and led them into darkness that smelled of ancient smoke and something else Tennessee couldn't name. Something that made the hair on her arms stand up despite the desert heat. "This place feels different," she whispered as Jack lit a small fire using dried wood that had been stacked near the entrance. Apache holy ground. Been used for ceremonies longer than anyone remembers. Jack's voice carried a note of respect that hadn't been there before. "My partner Crow Feather brought me here once. Said the spirits judge every soul that enters, decide if they're worthy of protection." The fire revealed cave paintings on the walls, ancient figures of hunters and animals, and symbols Tennessee couldn't read. Hope stirred in her arms, opening dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around them with unusual awareness for such a young baby. "She's looking at the paintings," Tennessee said, wonder creeping into her voice despite their danger. Jack glanced over, and his expression softened. Maybe the spirits are introducing themselves. Crow Feather always said children see things adults miss. Tennessee settled near the fire, grateful for the warmth that seemed to seep into her bones. Her body felt like it had been trampled by horses, but they were alive. That was more than she had dared hope for when the Apache attack began. "Tell me about your partner," she said, needing to hear about something besides death and destruction. "The one they killed." Jack stared into the flames for a long moment. Crow Feather was half Arapaho, half French. Met him when I was barely 20, green as spring grass and twice as stupid. He taught me how to read the land, how to move quiet, how to respect the old ways that keep a man alive out here. "How long were you partners?" 15 years. He was the closest thing to family I had left. Jack's voice roughened. "Found him staked out in an arroyo 3 days north of here. They took their time with him because he fought back instead of running." Tennessee reached out and touched Jack's scarred hand. "I'm sorry. Losing someone who matters. It's like having part of your soul torn away. That's why I've been tracking Mongas Coloratus. Not for revenge exactly, but for answers." Crow Feather knew the chief personally, traded with his people for years. Something changed to make the Apache break their words so completely. Hope made a small sound, not quite a cry, but something that drew both adults' attention. Tennessee offered her breast again, but the baby turned her head away. Instead, she stared at a particular spot on the cave wall where firelight danced across painted figures. "She sees something," Jack said quietly. Tennessee followed her daughter's gaze to a painting of a woman holding a child, surrounded by warriors with raised weapons. But the woman wasn't cowering. She stood straight and proud, the child in her arms like a shield against all the violence around them. "The artist knew," Tennessee whispered. "Whoever painted this knew that mothers fight hardest when their children are threatened. And sometimes," Jack added, his voice thoughtful, "fighting looks different than what folks expect." Outside the cave, wind moaned through the rock formations like distant voices. Tennessee held hope closer and wondered what the morning would bring. They had found shelter for now, but sanctuary never lasted long in this harsh country. Soon they would have to decide what came next. But for this moment, sitting by firelight in a place older than memory, Tennessee felt something she hadn't expected. Not just hope for survival, but hope for something more. Maybe Jack was right. Maybe fighting didn't always mean violence. Maybe sometimes it meant choosing to build something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. Hope fell asleep in her arms, tiny face peaceful in the flickering light. Whatever tomorrow brought, Tennessee would be ready for it. Dawn crept into the sacred cave like a cautious animal, painting the ancient walls in shades of gold and crimson. Tennessee woke to find Hope burning with fever, her tiny body hot as a coal against her chest. The baby's breathing came quick and shallow, and her dark eyes stared without really seeing. Jack. Tennessee's voice cracked with terror. Something's wrong with Hope. Jack was beside them in seconds, his weathered hands gentle as he touched the baby's forehead. His face went pale in the morning light. She's burning up. Could be from the birth, could be something she picked up in that cellar. Either way, she needs help fast. Tennessee's world tilted sideways. She had survived the Apache raid, delivered her baby in a hole in the ground, and walked 2 miles through the desert night. But now her daughter was slipping away in her arms, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "What kind of help?" she whispered, though part of her already knew the answer would tear her heart in half. "Apache medicine. They know healing ways the white world forgot centuries ago." Jack's pale eyes met hers steadily. "Crowfeather told me about their plant remedies, their ceremonies for bringing down fevers in newborns. But getting that help means going to the people who killed Samuel." Tennessee finished the thought, each word tasting like poison. Hope whimpered, a sound so small and weak it barely qualified as human noise. Her perfect little face was flushed red as sunset, and her breathing kept getting faster. Tennessee had seen babies die from fever before. She knew the signs, knew how quickly it could steal a life that had barely begun. "There might be another way," Jack said slowly. "I could try to find the herbs myself, bring them back here. But I don't know the Apache words for the ceremonies, don't know the exact mixtures that work on babies this young." "How long would that take?" Jack's silence was answer enough. By the time he found the right plants and figured out how to use them, Hope would be gone. They both knew it. The fever was moving too fast, burning too hot for trial and error medicine. Tennessee looked down at her daughter's flushed face and made the hardest decision of her life. "Take us to them." "Tenny, you understand what you're asking? These are the same warriors who killed your husband yesterday. They see you as an enemy, a threat to their people. Walking into their camp is like putting your head in a noose." "My baby is dying." Tennessee's voice came out stronger than she felt. "Samuel is already gone. Hope is all I have left of him, all I have left of anything that matters. If there's even a chance the Apache can save her, I have to try." Jack studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "There are protocols for approaching a war party. Ancient rules even Mangas Coloradus has to respect. If we do this right, if we show proper respect for their ways, they might listen before they kill us." "What kind of protocols?" "We go unarmed except for one knife. We carry white sage and eagle feathers if we can find them. Most important, we approach during the sacred hour when the sun touches the horizon. That's when Apache law says all enemies can speak without immediate violence." Tennessee gathered their few belongings while Jack searched the cave for anything that might help their cause. He found a bundle of dried sage wrapped in deer hide, left behind by some previous visitor to this holy place. "Crowfeather's emergency kit," Jack said, recognition dawning in his voice. "He must have cached this here before they caught him. The sage is perfect, and look." He unwrapped a single eagle feather, its white tip gleaming in the firelight. Hope's fever spiked higher. Her tiny body went rigid in Tennessee's arms, then limp as a cloth doll. Tennessee pressed her ear to her daughter's chest and barely heard the rapid flutter of a hummingbird heartbeat. "We go now," she said, terror making her voice sharp. "I don't care about protocols or sacred hours. My baby doesn't have time for ceremonies. If we approach wrong, we die and Hope dies with us." Jack's words hit like cold water. "If we do this right, we might all live to see another sunset. Trust me, Tenny. Trust the old ways that kept people alive out here long before white men ever saw these mountains." Tennessee wanted to scream at him, to run toward the Apache camp and beg for mercy. But Jack was right. One wrong move would doom them all. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to think past the panic that wanted to consume her. Tell me what to do. Jack explained the ritual as they prepared to leave the cave. How to hold the sage, how to keep the eagle feather visible, how to approach with proper humility. The words felt strange in Tennessee's mouth, but she repeated them until she could say them without stumbling. Remember, Jack said as they stepped into the harsh morning sunlight. To the Apache, courage means facing death with dignity. They respect that above almost everything else. Show them you're not afraid to die for your child, and they might just decide you're worthy of their help. Tennessee looked down at Hope's burning face and felt something fierce and unbreakable rise in her chest. She wasn't just a grieving widow anymore. She was a mother walking into the valley of death to save her child's life. And nothing on earth was going to stop her. The Apache camp spread across a hidden valley like a collection of earthen spirits. Wickiups made from bent branches and hide dotted the landscape, smoke rising from cooked fires in thin gray columns. Tennessee counted at least 50 warriors moving between the shelters, their weapons gleaming in the afternoon sun. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Hope's labored breathing kept her feet moving forward. Remember the words, Jack whispered as they approached the camp's edge. Speak them exactly like I taught you. One wrong syllable, and we're all dead. Tennessee clutched the eagle feather in her free hand, the sage bundle pressed against Hope's burning body. The baby had grown frighteningly still during their journey. Her eyes rolled back until only white showed. Time was running out faster than water through cracked stone. Apache sentries spotted them first. Warriors emerged from behind rocks and bushes, rifles trained on the approaching figures. Tennessee's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept walking. Showing fear now would doom them all. A tall warrior with silver hair and scars across his chest stepped forward. Tennessee recognized him immediately. Mongas Coloradus himself, the chief who had ordered Samuel's death. His dark eyes burned with intelligence and barely controlled fury as he studied the white woman carrying a baby toward his camp. Why do you come here, woman whose man I killed? His English was perfect, each word sharp as a knife blade. Do you seek revenge for your husband's blood? Tennessee's throat felt dry as desert sand, but she forced herself to speak the Apache words Jack had taught her. I come seeking mercy for my child, great chief. She burns with fever and will die without your medicine wisdom. Mongas Coloradus tilted his head, surprise flickering across his weathered features. You speak our tongue. Where did you learn these words? Bearclaw Sullivan taught me the proper way to approach your fire. Tennessee indicated Jack with a slight nod. He says you are a man who honors the old protocols even with enemies. The chief's eyes shifted to Jack, recognition dawning. You are the mountain man who rode with Crow Feather. I remember you from the peace talks 2 summers ago. I am, Jack replied in fluent Apache. Crow Feather called you brother. He would want you to hear this woman's request before deciding her fate. Crow Feather is dead, killed by my warriors for betraying his word to my people. Mongas Coloradus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Just as this woman's husband betrayed us by selling guns to the soldiers who murdered my son. Tennessee's legs threatened to buckle. She hadn't known about any gun sales to the army. Samuel had sworn he only traded with the Apache. But none of that mattered now. Only hope mattered. Chief, she said, her voice barely steady, whatever my husband did, this baby is innocent. She has never harmed your people. I offer my life in trade for the medicine that might save hers. Mongas Coloradus studied Hope's flushed face, something unreadable passing through his expression. Other warriors gathered around them in a silent circle, hands resting on weapons but not yet drawn. The tension stretched like a bowstring pulled to its breaking point. Show me the child, the chief commanded. Tennessee stepped forward on shaking legs and carefully pulled back the cloth covering Hope's face. The baby looked more dead than alive, her skin burning hot and her breathing so shallow it barely moved her tiny chest. An elderly Apache woman pushed through the circle of warriors. Her hair was white as winter clouds, and her hands were stained green from working with healing plants. She looked at Hope for a long moment. then spoke rapidly to Mongas Coloradus in words too fast for Tennessee to follow. The chief's expression shifted, anger giving way to something deeper. He spoke back to the old woman, their conversation growing heated. Other warriors joined in, voices rising as they debated something that clearly divided the group. Finally, Mongas Coloradus raised his hand for silence. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Medicine woman Nailnish says your child has the fever that steals Apache babies as well as white ones. She has lost 3 grandchildren to this sickness. Hope whimpered, the sound barely audible, but enough to break Tennessee's heart all over again. The old woman, Nailnish, stepped forward and gestured for Tennessee to follow her. Wait, Mongas Coloradus called out. The woman may enter our healing lodge, but you, Bear Claw Sullivan, will remain here as surety for her good behavior. If she proves false, if this is some white man's trick, your life will pay the price. Jack nodded grimly. Understood, Chief. I'll wait here while Nailnish does her work. Tennessee wanted to protest, to insist that Jack come with them. But Hope made another weak sound, and all other concerns faded. She followed the medicine woman toward a large wickiup painted with symbols Tennessee didn't recognize, hope and terror warring in her chest. As they reached the entrance, Nailnish turned to her with eyes full of ancient sadness. White woman, she said in careful English, I will try to save your daughter. But you must understand, sometimes the spirits call children home no matter what medicine we use. Are you prepared for that truth? Tennessee looked down at Hope's burning face and felt her world balance on the edge of a knife. I'm prepared to fight for her until my last breath. Whatever it takes. Nailnish nodded slowly. Then come. We will see if the old medicine can work one more miracle in this broken world. Inside the healing lodge, sweet smoke filled the air from burning herbs Tennessee couldn't name. Nailnish worked with ancient hands that seemed to know secrets passed down through generations. She ground plants into powder, mixed water with roots, and chanted words that felt older than the mountains themselves. Lay the child here, Nailnish instructed, pointing to a soft bed of woven grass and rabbit fur. Remove her coverings. The fever must be drawn out through her skin. Tennessee obeyed with trembling fingers, unwrapping Hope's tiny body. The baby's skin burned like fire, and her breathing had grown so faint Tennessee had to lean close to feel any air moving at all. Outside the lodge, she could hear Apache voices rising and falling in heated discussion. Jack's life hung in the balance along with Hope's. Nailnish began painting symbols on Hope's chest with a paste made from blue clay and ground herbs. Her movements were precise and ritualistic, each mark placed according to some pattern Tennessee couldn't understand. The old woman's lips moved constantly, forming words in a language that sounded like whined through canyon walls. What are you saying? Tennessee whispered. I speak to the fever spirits. I tell them this child is too young to travel to the next world. I ask them to release their hold and return her to the world of the living. Nailnish's hands never stopped moving as she worked. But spirits do not always listen, even to old women who have bargained with them for 70 winters. A clay pot boiled over a small fire in the center of the lodge. Steam rose carrying the scent of pine and something sharper that made Tennessee's eyes water. Nailnish lifted the pot with wooden tongs and poured the hot liquid into a shallow bowl. Hold your daughter while I wash her with this medicine. The heat will fight the heat, balance with balance. This is the old way. Tennessee cradled Hope as Nailnish began bathing the baby's burning skin with the herbal water. Hope's eyes fluttered open for the first time in hours, focusing on Tennessee's face with an awareness that hadn't been there before. A tiny spark of hope kindled in Tennessee's chest. She sees me. Tennessee breathed. The medicine begins its work. But this is only the first step. Nailnish set down the bowl and reached for a leather pouch hanging from the lodge's center pole. Now comes the hardest part. For both of you. From the pouch, she withdrew a thin bone needle and a small vial of dark liquid. Tennessee's blood went cold as she realized what Nailnish intended to do. You're going to cut her? One small wound on her heel. The bad blood must have a way to escape, or the fever will return stronger than before. Nailnish held Tennessee's gaze steadily. This will hurt your child. She will cry. But crying means her spirit grows strong enough to fight. Tennessee's every instinct screamed against letting anyone hurt her baby. But Hope's fever was still raging, and the Apache medicine was their only chance. She nodded slowly, holding Hope tighter. Nailnish pricked Hope's tiny heel with the bone needle. Hope's mouth opened in a wail that filled the lodge with sound. Dark blood dripped onto the earthen floor, each drop seeming to carry some of the burning heat away with it. Good, Nailnish said with satisfaction. She cries with power. The fever spirits grow weaker. For the next hour, Nailnish continued her work. More herbal washes, more symbols painted on Hope's skin, more chanted words that seemed to push back against whatever invisible force was trying to claim the baby's life. Tennessee held her daughter through it all, whispering promises and prayers in equal measure. Outside, the Apache voices grew louder. Tennessee caught fragments of angry words through the lodge walls. Some warriors wanted blood for blood. Others spoke of ancient laws that protected those who sought healing. The debate seemed to be tearing the camp apart. Your man waits with courage, Nailnish said without looking up from her work. Mongas Coloradus has not yet decided whether to honor the old ways or satisfy his warriors' thirst for vengeance. What will tip the balance? Whether your child lives or dies. If she dies, some will say our medicine was not strong enough because the white man's gods fought against us. If she lives, others will say the spirits have spoken in favor of mercy. Nailnish touched Hope's forehead gently. The fever breaks. Feel. Tennessee pressed her palm to Hope's skin and nearly cried with relief. The burning heat was fading, replaced by a warmth that felt natural and healthy. Hope's breathing deepened, and her eyes tracked movement around the lodge with growing alertness. She's going to live, Tennessee whispered, hardly daring to believe it. The immediate danger passes, but she will need care for many days, and the journey ahead will be hard for such a young one. Nailnish began gathering her medicine bundles. Now we face a different challenge. Convincing Mongas Coloradus that saving your child's life creates obligation, not weakness. Angry shouts erupted outside the lodge. Tennessee heard Jack's voice rise above the others, speaking in rapid Apache. Then Mongas Coloradus bellowing orders that cut through all other sound like an axe through wood. What's happening? Tennessee clutched Hope tighter. Nailnish moved to the lodge entrance and peered through a gap in the hide covering. Her weathered face went grim. Some of the young warriors grow impatient with talk. They say the time for mercy has passed. A gunshot cracked across the camp like thunder. Tennessee's heart stopped beating as she wondered if Jack had just paid the ultimate price for helping her save Hope's life. Stay here, Nailnish commanded. Whatever happens outside, you protect that child with your life. The spirits have invested too much in her survival to let her die now from human foolishness. The old woman stepped outside into whatever chaos was unfolding. Tennessee was left alone with Hope, both of them caught between life and death, while the fate of everyone they cared about hung in the balance beyond the thin hide walls. The gunshot had been a warning shot into the air. When Tennessee finally emerged from the healing lodge with Hope in her arms, she found the entire Apache camp gathered in a circle around Mongas Coloradus and Jack Sullivan. The chief held his rifle skyward, smoke still curling from the barrel. Young warriors who had been advancing on Jack now stood frozen, waiting for their leader's next command. Enough, Mongas Coloradus declared, his voice carrying absolute authority. The medicine woman has spoken. The white child lives because our healing ways are strong. This is a sign from the spirits that mercy has power even in times of war. A young warrior with paint across his cheeks stepped forward, anger burning in his dark eyes. Great chief, this woman's husband sold guns that killed your son. Apache blood cries out for Apache justice. Why do we heal the children of our enemies? Tennessee's breath caught in her throat. Everything balanced on Mongas Coloradus's next words. Hope stirred in her arms, no longer burning with fever, but still weak from her ordeal. The baby's dark eyes seemed to take in the circle of warriors surrounding them, as if she understood that her life hung in the balance once again. Mongus Coloradus studied Hope's face for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of prophecy. I look at this child and see the future. She is Apache and white, born in violence, but saved by mercy. Perhaps the spirits send her to teach us that there can be another way forward. What other way? The young warrior demanded. The white men take our land, kill our people, break every promise they make. How do we make peace with those who see us as animals to be destroyed? The chief's scarred face grew thoughtful. By showing them that we are capable of wisdom they lack. By proving that Apache strength comes not just from war, but from choosing when not to fight. He turned to Tennessee, his eyes unreadable. White woman, your husband is dead. Your home is ashes. You have nothing left but this child. What would you do to ensure her safety? Tennessee felt the weight of every gaze upon her. These people had killed Samuel, destroyed everything she and her husband had built together. By all rights, she should hate them with every fiber of her being. But Nailnish had saved Hope's life when no white doctor could have helped. Jack had delivered her baby and guided them to safety. Mongus Coloradus himself had allowed the healing when he could have simply ordered their deaths. I would learn, she said quietly. I would try to understand why the violence started and how it might end. For Hope's sake, I would choose building over destroying. Nailnish stepped forward from the crowd, her ancient voice carrying easily across the gathering. This woman has shown courage equal to any warrior. She walked into our camp knowing we might kill her, seeking only to save her child's life. Such bravery deserves respect, not death. Mongus Coloradus nodded slowly. Medicine woman speaks truth. But respect must flow both ways. He fixed Tennessee with a stare that seemed to see straight through to her soul. If I spare your life and the life of your child, what will you give in return? Tennessee looked down at Hope, then back at the chief. What do you want? I want you to carry a message to your people. Tell them that Mongus Coloradus does not make war from hatred, but from necessity. Tell them that Apache children also burn with fever, also need medicine, also deserve to grow up in peace. His voice grew harder. Tell them that if they continue to sell guns to soldiers who hunt my people, there will be more raids, more death, more sorrow for mothers on both sides. And if they listen, if they agree to fair trade without weapons, then perhaps this child will grow up in a world where Apache and white children play together instead of mourning their fathers. Mongus Coloradus gestured to Jack. Bear Claw Sullivan will escort you safely to the nearest army fort. From there, you can spread the message wherever your people will listen. The young warrior who had challenged the chief earlier stepped forward again. And if the white soldiers do not listen? If they use this woman's words as weakness to plan new attacks? Mongus Coloradus's expression grew cold as winter stone. Then we will remind them why Apache warriors are feared from the great river to the southern deserts. But first, we try the path of wisdom. If it fails, we can always return to the path of war. Tennessee felt a strange mix of grief and hope swirling in her chest. Samuel was gone. Their trading post was ashes. Their dreams had been shattered by violence and betrayal. But hope was alive and healthy, growing stronger in her arms with each passing moment. And somehow, impossibly, her daughter's birth in the midst of an Apache raid had opened a door that might lead to peace instead of endless bloodshed. I'll carry your message, she promised. I'll tell them about the medicine woman who saved my daughter's life when her own people would have let her die. I'll tell them about the chief who chose mercy when he could have chosen revenge. Mongus Coloradus extended his hand toward Hope. The baby reached out with tiny fingers and grasped the chief's thumb, holding on with surprising strength. For a moment, the scarred war leader's face softened completely. What do you call her? Hope, Tennessee answered. Her name is Hope Morrison. Then let Hope Morrison grow up to build bridges between our peoples instead of walls. Mongus Coloradus gently freed his thumb from the baby's grip. And let her remember that her life was saved by Apache medicine and Apache mercy. As Tennessee and Jack prepared to leave the camp, Nailnish pressed a small leather pouch into Tennessee's hands. Herbs for the child's continued healing. And something else. She leaned close and whispered, Your daughter has been touched by the spirits today. She will carry that blessing all her life. Teach her to use it wisely. 3 days later, Tennessee stood at the gates of Fort Braxton, holding hope and carrying a message that might change the course of history. Behind her, Jack Sullivan waited with their horses, ready to guide them toward whatever future they could build from the ashes of the past. Hope looked up at her mother with bright, alert eyes that seemed far too wise for someone barely a week old. Tennessee smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead, tasting the salt of tears she hadn't realized she was shedding. "Come on, little bridge builder," she whispered. "Let's go change the world." Thank you for joining Tennessee and Hope on their incredible journey. If this story moved you, touched your heart, or opened your eyes to the power of choosing mercy over revenge, please hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing true stories that prove love really can conquer hate. Drop a comment and let me know which part of their adventure affected you most. Until next time, keep believing in the power of hope to transform even the darkest situations into something beautiful.